Part 1. The Dismissed One. They said I was a failure, someone who'd never accomplish anything worthwhile. I didn't argue, I didn't lash out. I simply smiled. Because deep down, I already knew something they didn't. Something that would flip everything on its head. But let's rewind a little. A few months back, I overheard my mother say, "That girl's a lost cause. She's not going to make it anywhere," as she casually poured coffee for my sister in our kitchen. She didn't realize I was standing right outside the doorway. If you've ever been disregarded by your own family, ignored, minimized, or told your ambitions were unrealistic, then you'll connect with this story. Hit that subscribe button and stick with me. What happened next changed everything. My name is Kelly Dawson. I'm 31, single, and, in the eyes of my family, still figuring things out. What they don't know is, I found my path long ago. They just never took the time to look closely enough to see it. To them, I'm still the girl who dropped out of med school due to panic attacks. The one who quit law school after a single semester. The girl who changed majors 3 times and worked at a local bookstore, while everyone else followed the traditional success checklist. Not once did they ask what I was working on through the night, or what I was quietly building while the world slept. Instead, they saw my sister Erin, polished, ambitious, safe Erin, and labeled her the family's star. She had it all: a Harvard MBA, a fiancé who's a senior partner, and a perfectly curated LinkedIn profile. So when I said I'd gotten an interview at Corvex Media, one of the top rising digital firms in the country, they barely responded. "Oh," Dad muttered. "Well, fingers crossed, just don't expect too much." Mom gave a distracted nod, eyes already back on her laptop browsing wedding venues with Erin. What they didn't realize is that I had been consulting for Corvex quietly under a pseudonym for over a year. I had helped reshape their internal brand strategy and was steadily building a strong reputation with the board. But I never told my family. Why? Because when you grow up in a household where affection is earned, where love is conditional and success is currency, you learn to operate in silence. You celebrate in secret. Because making noise only invites sabotage. And I had already learned that lesson the hard way. Part 2. The moment everything shifted. 2 weeks before my scheduled interview at Corvex, I stumbled across a conversation that shifted everything. I had swung by my parents' house to return a casserole dish. Nothing out of the ordinary. As I made my way past the side gate, I heard my name. "She applied to Corvex," my mother sighed. "I just can't see her getting in. That one's always been a disappointment. Now you'd be perfect for it. Here, maybe reach out on LinkedIn. Mention the family name." I froze, not from pain. I was used to that kind of talk. It was the casual cruelty that struck me, as if my name wasn't even worth serious consideration. Later that evening, Erin posted a photo of herself at a gala, tagging Corvex Media as a sponsor. Her caption read, "Dream job vibes, let's see where this leads." She was angling for the same job and trying to leapfrog me once again. But this time I didn't stop her, because I didn't need to. The board had already made their decision. The paperwork was signed. In 10 business days, Corvex Media would no longer be privately owned. It would be mine. For the past 3 years, I had quietly acquired controlling interest through anonymous investors, shell corporations, and private trusts. Nobody suspected a thing. Nobody realized the woman behind the strategy presentations was me. And now, my own family was unknowingly trying to wedge themselves into a company I fully owned. So, I let them. I watched Erin suddenly express a newfound passion for branding. I listened as my mom offered tips on how to impress a real CEO. I stayed quiet while my dad boasted that Erin would be the perfect face for Corvex's newest division. I took notes, because sometimes the most satisfying form of revenge isn't loud. It's calculated. It's patient. It's a silent burn, building slowly toward the moment when the truth can't be ignored anymore. And that moment, it was almost here. Part 3. The interview they never saw coming at our next family dinner. Erin clinked her glass and said, "Here's to fresh starts. You never know what's around the corner." Everyone smiled. Mom gave her a proud wink. Dad gave her a firm pat on the back. I just sipped my water and smiled, because I already knew exactly where her new beginning was headed. Straight into my office. The interview at Corvex Media was scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. sharp. Erin had spent the weekend helping me prepare under the guise of sisterly support. "Kelly, tone down the tech lingo," she said, while sipping her matcha latte on my couch. "CEOs want charm, not code, and maybe wear that blue blouse. It hides your arms." I nodded and bit my tongue. She truly believed I needed her coaching, that I was going into that room just another hopeful candidate. What she didn't know? I had reviewed the interview roster the night before and personally added her name to the list. I wanted her there because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. People show their real selves when they think they're above you. And I was curious, what would Erin do if she thought I was just competition? Spoiler, she didn't disappoint. I arrived at the Corvex lobby 20 minutes early just to watch. Erin was already standing near reception in a crisp white blazer, scrolling confidently on her phone, radiating the smug ease of someone sure she belonged. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. "Oh, you made it," she said flatly. "That's great, just stay confident even if it's not your strong suit." She still thought this was a race, still thought she had the upper hand. We were escorted upstairs by the same assistant. She assumed it was chance. It wasn't. I had arranged for our interviews to be back-to-back. Erin went in first. I waited outside, thumbing through a copy of Adweek, while she delivered her flawless pitch on personal branding and corporate synergy. I knew the spiel by heart, and so did the board. 15 minutes later, she emerged, chin high. "They seemed impressed," she whispered smugly as she passed me. "Good luck, Kel." Then it was my turn. I walked into the same glass-walled room, but the atmosphere instantly shifted. Every board member stood, not because I was applying, but because I owned the company. "Miss Dawson," Marcus, the board chair, said with a knowing smile, "Shall we get started?" I nodded and sat, not across from them, but at the head of the table. The cameras rolled, not to evaluate me, but to formally document the transition. This wasn't an interview, it was a performance. And I knew every line. I spoke about vision, transparency, bold storytelling, ethical branding. I shared data only I had access to, answered every question like I had written it, because I had. 20 minutes later, I rose, shook hands, and said, "Thank you for your time. I'm excited to lead this team into its next chapter." As I stepped out, Erin was still by the elevator, assuming I had just wrapped up a standard interview. She looked startled at my confidence. "They asked great questions," I said breezily. She gave a nervous laugh. "Well, fingers crossed one of us gets the job," I smiled. "Oh, I'm sure one of us will." That night, our family group chat buzzed with excitement. "Mom, Erin, any updates?" "Fingers crossed, sweetie." "Dad, Kelly, this was great experience. Proud of you for going through with it." "Erin, they said they'll be making final decisions by Friday." I didn't reply, because I already knew what Friday would bring. Friday morning, Erin was seated at the kitchen table, constantly refreshing her inbox. Our parents hovered close by, as if waiting for a curtain to rise on a Broadway debut. At exactly 9:03 a.m., her phone rang. She put it on speaker. "Hi, this is Ava from Corvex. Thank you for your time earlier this week. We truly appreciate your interest." Erin sat up straighter. "But we've decided to move in another direction." A pause. Erin's voice went flat. "Oh, okay, thanks for letting me know." The call ended. Silence filled the room. "They said no," she murmured. Mom blinked. "But your interview went so well." I casually poured my coffee, leaning on the counter. Sometimes it's not about performance, it's about the right fit. Erin glanced at me and our eyes met, and our There was something behind her stare, confusion, maybe even doubt. I gave her a soft smile. Better luck next time. But the real fireworks were still on the horizon, because the official announcement naming me CEO of Corvex Media was set to go live Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp. And this time, there would be no pretending they hadn't seen it coming. If you've ever longed for the moment when those who underestimated you are forced to confront who you truly are, then you'll understand exactly how I felt that Monday morning. At precisely 7:58 a.m., the email went out. Subject line: Leadership Update. Corvex Media appoints new CEO. Within moments, it hit inboxes across the company, spread like wildfire on LinkedIn, and triggered a wave of buzz in our industry. Texts started flying in. Old clients, past coworkers, even high school acquaintances, suddenly remembering my name. But the one message that made me pause came from the family group chat. Mom, tell me this is a prank? Kelly? Erin. Wait, are you that Kelly Dawson, the one they just named CEO? Please, tell me this is some tech glitch. I didn't respond. I let the silence speak volumes. At 8:10 a.m., I stepped into the Corvex building. Not as an applicant, not as a consultant, not even as someone climbing the ladder. I was the one at the top. Employees were already gathering in the atrium for the internal announcement, which would be live streamed to all remote teams and satellite offices. A small video crew was set up to the side. My assistant, Ray, handed me a sleek black folder. "Everything's ready," she whispered. I nodded, stepped toward the podium, and took in the sight. Hundreds of employees, board members, and leaders all waiting for direction. "Good morning," I began calmly. "As you may have heard, Corvex Media has a new CEO. That CEO is me." There was a beat, a few audible gasps, then silence. I've spent the past year working quietly within these walls, listening, observing, building. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to understand this company from your point of view. The room leaned in, listening more intently now. Corvex was built on bold stories and authentic voices, but somewhere along the way we started playing it safe, choosing predictable leaders, empty titles, and safe ideas. I think we're ready for more. Pause. My name is Kelly Dawson. I own Corvex Media, and I intend to lead it with transparency, creativity, and the kind of innovation this industry forgot it needed. Applause started slowly, then spread across the room, growing louder and fuller. Ray gave me a slight nod. The message had landed. They knew who I was now. But the truth is, I wasn't just doing this for them. I did it for the version of myself who used to cry alone after every holiday dinner. The girl who was always made to feel like a disappointment. For the woman who stayed silent when her own mother said she'd never amount to anything. For every voice that was ignored, who learned to rise in silence. After the announcement, I returned to my office, and that's when the messages really started flooding in. "Dad, why didn't you tell us?" "Mom, we're stunned." "You completely blindsided us, Kelly." "Erin, you humiliated me. I was just trying to help you, and you made me look like a complete fool." I stared at Erin's message for a while. She wasn't wrong about one thing. She did end up looking foolish. But I didn't make her look that way. She did that herself, by belittling me, by trying to outmaneuver me, by treating me as a stepping stone in her perfectly crafted story. Still, I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I asked Ray to schedule a formal meeting with my family for Wednesday evening, in my office, full access badges, reserved conference room, and yes, I had it recorded. If they were going to confront me, I wanted every word on record. No more behind-the-scenes manipulation. Wednesday came sooner than I expected. Erin arrived first, stiff posture, clenched jaw. She wore the same white blazer from her interview, as if trying to reclaim the power she thought she once held. Mom followed close behind, her face unreadable. Dad walked in last, his expression a mix of guilt and uncertainty. The same face I'd seen too many times before. They sat across from me at the glass-walled table in total silence. "So," Mom said, folding her hands, "this is real." It is, I replied. You should have told us, Dad added, his voice forced. We're your family. Erin scoffed. Was this your idea of revenge? Letting me apply, letting me believe I had a shot? I met her gaze. You did have a shot, just not the one you thought. Mom leaned forward. We were caught off guard, Kelly. We had no clue you were capable of this. I nodded slowly. I know. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. I needed to see who you'd be when you thought I had nothing. And now here they were, sitting in my office at my table, finally looking at the version of me they never believed existed. But what they still didn't realize, that was just the beginning. The room was still. 3 people sat across from me, their eyes flickering with a blend of confusion, resentment, and something they'd never admit: fear. For the first time ever, they weren't in control of the conversation. I was. Mom folded her arms tightly. You think this is payback, don't you? No, I answered, voice steady. I think this is a conversation that's 31 years overdue. Erin's jaw clenched. If you wanted to prove something, you could have just told us. Going public like this, blindsiding us, that's cruel. I tilted my head slightly. You mean like when you applied for a job at the company you thought I was desperate to get into, and then tried to undercut me with backdoor recommendations to the board? She froze. I didn't. Yes, you did. I cut in, holding up a printed email. You reached out to 3 board members. You positioned yourself as a better cultural fit. You mentioned my lack of leadership experience and flaunted your Harvard connections. Want me to read it out loud? Her mouth opened, then closed. Mom looked between us in disbelief. Dad exhaled deeply and sank back in his chair. I was trying to help you, Erin muttered. I just thought you were reaching too far. I raised an eyebrow. Or maybe you assumed I was still the girl editing blog posts in her basement and fumbling every big opportunity? Maybe you like thinking I needed saving, because it made you feel like the one who had it together. You don't know what you're saying, Mom snapped. Her voice sharpened. We were always there for you, all those times you needed help. No, I said softly but firmly. You gave money like it was a reminder I was failing. Every dollar came with a lecture. Every favor came with strings. That's not support. That's control. Again, silence. Only the quiet hum of the AC and the ticking of the wall clock kept the air from going still. I stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, letting the city skyline stretch wide before me. I didn't build Corvex to prove you wrong, I said, still facing the glass. I built it to prove myself right, that I'm capable, that I'm worthy, that I don't need validation to create value. I turned slowly, but at some point, I realized I did want one thing: to stop hiding, to stop pretending I was less than I am just to keep you comfortable. Erin's eyes shimmered. So what now? Are we enemies? No, I said gently. But I'm done pretending you didn't try to undermine me. Dad finally spoke again. You've made your point, you're successful. We get it. What do you want from us? I returned to my seat. My voice was clear. I want acknowledgement, not applause, just honesty. I want you to admit you tried to sabotage me, that you never truly believed in me, that what you said behind my back came from your own discomfort, not my lack of talent. Mom looked at me like I'd spoken another language. That's ridiculous, she said. Erin shook her head. I'm not going to sit here and say I never believed in you. I didn't expect this. Exactly, I said. That's the problem. There was a long pause. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. You were always different, Kelly. Not worse. Just harder to understand. We didn't know how to support that. At least that sounded real. Mom stood abruptly. Well, I don't know what more you want. We came. We listened. If you want to keep digging up old wounds, that's your choice. She walked toward the door. But I stopped her with one final truth. You never saw me, I said quietly. Because I made you uncomfortable. And you couldn't admit the daughter you dismissed was building something bigger than you could imagine. She didn't turn. She just stood there, unmoving. Then Erin stood too. I don't know how to fix this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But maybe I wasn't the only one pretending. That hit deeper than I expected. They left without saying goodbye. Dad lingered, gave me a nod that felt more like an apology than approval, and followed them out. The room felt lighter after they were gone, like some storm had finally passed. And within me, something heavier began to settle. They had seen it. They couldn't unsee it. And this time they couldn't rewrite the story. I had walked into that room as the version of myself they refused to believe in, and walked out with something far greater than their permission. I had found my freedom. They rarely take it well. After that meeting, I half expected my family to take a step back, to reflect, maybe even offer an apology. I overestimated them. The next morning, my LinkedIn inbox was overflowing, not with messages from peers or colleagues, but from distant acquaintances, some I barely remembered. They all had one common link: my mother. She had started contacting former teachers, mutual friends, alumni groups, spinning a new version of the truth. She said I had manipulated my way into the CEO position, that I'd used unfair advantages and ruthless tactics, that someone more deserving had been robbed. Translation: Erin. Then came the tip-off from a former college classmate. Hey, Kelly. Not sure if you've seen it yet, but your mom's been posting in a private alumni group. You might want to take a look. So I did, and there it was. Her post, polished, vague, poised as a wounded parent. It's heartbreaking when success becomes a weapon, when family forgets loyalty in their pursuit of power. We raised our children to support one another, not compete. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, people consoling her, siding with her. A few even chimed in with, "She was always a little distant," or, "I remember Erin being so bright." Must be tough. The narrative had shifted. Not to "look what Kelly built," but to "poor Erin, poor family. Look at what they're dealing with." I should have been furious, but I wasn't. Instead, I waited. Because one thing I've learned: when you stop letting people control your story, they panic. I didn't clap back, didn't comment, repost, or send dramatic messages. I let them talk. But behind the scenes, I started documenting everything: emails, screenshots, voicemails, even the late-night messages Erin left me that veered between desperate and angry. "You think this means you've won? You just got lucky. This isn't over. Watch your back." At first, I thought it was just emotional backlash, Erin struggling with the loss of control, until something else arrived: an anonymous complaint to Corvex HR. It accused me of falsifying credentials, misrepresenting past acquisitions, and coercing the board into my appointment. Attached was a sloppy Google Doc filled with outdated data and doctored screenshots. It was laughable, but policy dictated we open a formal investigation. I met privately with Marcus, our board chair. He flipped through the file and shook his head. "It's clearly bogus," he said, dropping it onto the table. "But we'll go through the motions for transparency." I nodded. "Do you think we know who sent it?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew. It wasn't just resentment anymore, it was sabotage. And that changed everything. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights flickering against the glass, the file from HR still in my lap. But I didn't feel anger, not like before. I wasn't the girl crying over being overlooked at family dinners. I wasn't the young woman trying to earn praise that would never come. I wasn't even sad. I was done. Done waiting for their recognition. Done minimizing myself to keep the peace. Done hoping they'd finally see me. So I made a choice. The next morning, I called Corvex's legal department and authorized a cease and desist notice to be drafted. Anyone, family or otherwise, spreading false claims about the company or its leadership would receive one. Then I sent a message directly to Erin. You've made your point. I'm not here to fight. But if you continue targeting my career, I will take legal action. I won't hesitate. She never replied. But the posts stopped. The calls stopped. And for the first time in years, the noise stopped. There were no more whispers disguised as concern, no more subtle jabs wrapped in smiles, no more group chats dissecting my decisions like they were family gossip. Just silence. And in that silence, I found something deeper than revenge. I found boundaries. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, and that's what I chose. I didn't destroy my family. They did that the moment they prioritized pride over support, control over connection. But I reclaimed something more valuable than their approval: my peace. As Corvex continued to thrive, expanding into markets we once only dreamed of, I found myself not chasing success, but guiding it, reviewing proposals from brands I once idolized, leading a team that didn't just respect me, but believed in the vision I brought. And quietly, without needing applause or revenge, I became something they never imagined: a woman who didn't just deserve the room, she owned it. 6 months later, I barely recognized my own life. Corvex Media had doubled in size. We were reaching global markets, landing clients we used to pitch to with crossed fingers. But we weren't just growing a company. We were building a movement, one centered on integrity, bold vision, and real leadership. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. No veiled critiques disguised as just advice. No passive-aggressive questions about when I'd get a real job. Just peace. I hadn't heard from Erin in months, not directly. But I heard about her. She had quietly left her firm. Apparently, word got around about the accusations. Even in corporate circles, reputations move faster than gossip. As for my parents, they didn't reach out, didn't show up to Corvex's holiday gala, even though it was just 15 minutes from their house, until one quiet Sunday. An envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address, just my name in soft, familiar handwriting. Inside, a letter. Kelly, I've rewritten this so many times. I know we haven't spoken since the meeting, and maybe you don't even want to hear from me. But I want you to know, you were right. I didn't really see you. I was too busy projecting my fears. Afraid you'd fail. Afraid you'd prove me wrong. Afraid the quiet one might outshine the golden one I held so tightly to. You didn't need our help to succeed, but you deserved it. And I'm sorry we didn't give it to you. I see you now. Mom, I read it 3 times. Not because I needed it to mean something, but because, for the first time, it felt like her real voice. Not the one for brunches or family church events. Just truth. That evening, I filed the letter away in a drawer, not on display, not pinned to a wall, just tucked away like the final page of a chapter I had finally closed. A few days later, Erin messaged me. I'm working at a startup now, entry level, learning the hard way. You were right. I needed to fall. If you're ever open to it, maybe we can grab coffee. No expectations, just start over. I didn't say yes, but I didn't delete it either. Because sometimes the apology isn't in the words, it's in the change. And as for me, I was still building legacy without permission, building dreams without needing validation. Not out of revenge, but out of vision. Because I no longer needed the people who doubted me to believe in me. I had become the kind of woman who didn't demand respect. She earned it, quietly, unapologetically, relentlessly. And I still think about that moment in the kitchen, when my own mother said, "That failure won't ever achieve anything." She had no idea what she ignited that day. Some fires don't explode. Some fires burn slow, until one day they light up the whole sky. This wasn't a story about revenge. This was a story about recognition, of self-worth, of resilience, of quiet strength that doesn't beg for applause. So if you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told to be more realistic, hear this. You don't need their permission. You don't need their validation. You only need to believe in the version of yourself that terrifies them the most. Because one day they'll walk into a room and realize the person they once called a failure now owns the building.